All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we'll be exploring
The 40 Rules of Love
the 40 Rules of Love. Yeah,
by Elif Shafak.
exactly, by Elif Shafak. So for those of you who aren't familiar, maybe give us a little bit of background on who Elif Shafak is.
Yeah, so she's a Turkish novelist,
Okay.
and she kind of splits her time between the U.S. and Istanbul.
Oh, interesting.
And this book, 40 Rules of Love, is
Yeah.
one of 6 novels that she's written. She's also written one work of nonfiction.
Okay. Well, so what makes this book, this particular novel,
Right.
so special?
Well, it's actually, it's a dual narrative.
Okay.
So it's kind of 2 stories in one.
All right.
So one story takes place in 2008 America
Mm-hmm.
with this character named Ella Rubinstein.
Okay.
And then the other narrative takes place in the 13th century
Wow.
in Konya and Baghdad.
Okay.
And this story focuses on the poet Rumi
Rumi.
and his sort of companion, Shams of Tabriz.
Okay, so it's not just 2 stories running parallel.
No, it's not just that. It's
What else is it?
Well, it's all kind of structured around these 40 rules of love.
Oh, I see.
So it's kind of giving, I guess you could say like sort of spiritual advice, kind of in the vein of,
Like almost self-help?
yeah, self-help, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also draws on a lot of different sources, so it's not just fiction. It also uses historical figures and references to Islamic mysticism.
Like Sufism.
Like Sufism, exactly. And of course, Rumi's poetry. There's actually, you'll find some excerpts from Coleman Barks' translations
wow.
of Rumi's poetry woven into the text.
Yeah, I love Coleman Barks. He's a great translator.
Yeah, he is.
So for listeners who maybe haven't read this, or maybe they've heard of it but haven't quite gotten around to it, what are we hoping to, what's our mission for this deep dive?
Well, I think our mission is to kind of give you a sense of like some of the core ideas in this book, and really just to kind of understand what the book is about, you know?
Yeah, without having to read the whole thing.
Exactly. So we're hoping that you can kind of come away with a better understanding.
What are the key takeaways?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we'll also look at like some of the connections between these 2 different stories because they are connected in really surprising ways.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start with Ella. What's going on in her life when the book begins?
Well, she's in a really kind of tough place, actually.
Oh, okay.
For one thing, she's not really getting along with her daughter, Jeanette.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeanette's about to get married.
Okay.
And Ella does not approve of the guy she's marrying.
So that's causing some tension?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tension there. Like right from the get-go, we see this scene where they're all sitting around the kitchen table. Jeanette, her siblings, Orly and Avi, they're all there. And you can just tell that something's off.
Yeah, family conflict can be really, really difficult.
It is. And Jeanette ends up storming off, and then the other kids kind of follow her. And then even their Aunt Esther.
So family's pretty fractured.
Yeah, it really is. It's like everyone's going their separate ways.
Yeah.
And Ella's kind of left there feeling really lost and alone.
So what else is going on in her life at this point?
Well, she's just started a new job at a literary agency.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and her first assignment is to read this manuscript by this European author, kind of a nobody, Aziz Zahara.
Yeah.
And at first, she's really reluctant.
Does she want to read it?
Not really. She even lies to her colleague, Michelle, about having started reading it.
So she's not exactly embracing change.
Not at all, no. She's very much a creature of habit.
How so?
Well, like she has these very set routines, especially when it comes to things like cooking. She's got like this fusion cooking club that meets on Thursdays.
Oh, interesting.
But even then, it's all about mastering the techniques, the traditional ways of doing things. She's not really into experimenting.
Okay.
Like she's not going to throw a bunch of random ingredients together and see what happens.
Right.
It's very structured and traditional.
So how does she eventually get drawn into this, into Aziz Zahara's writing?
Well, she stumbles upon his blog.
Okay.
It's called An Eggshell Named Life.
Oh, that's an interesting title.
Yeah, and she sees this picture of a whirling dervish.
Oh, wow.
And she's intrigued. Like she's never seen anything like that before.
Right.
And so she starts to get curious about the author himself.
Yeah.
And his whole world, I guess you could say.
So she reaches out to him.
She does, yeah.
Okay.
She sends him an email. And it's not just a, hey, I liked your book kind of email. She's really pouring her heart out to him.
Really?
Yeah, she's telling him all about her problems, but how she doesn't approve of her daughter's fiance.
Wow, so she's really opening up to him.
She is, yeah.
Right.
And she mentions that he seems to be in Guatemala, according to his blog.
Okay, so that's Ella's situation in 2008. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and go back in time to the 13th century
Right.
to Rumi and Shams. So who are these guys?
Well, Rumi, his full name is actually Jalal ad-Din Rumi,
Yeah.
but he's often referred to as Maulana, which means like our master.
Okay.
And he was a very respected Islamic scholar. Like he was a big deal, especially in Baghdad where he was living at the time. He had lots of students, disciples, who would come to hear him teach.
So a pretty traditional religious figure.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
But then along comes Shams of Tabriz.
And everything changes.
Yeah, exactly. Their meeting in 1244 was this huge turning point for Rumi.
How so?
Well, Shams was this wandering dervish who had these kind of unconventional views.
Okay.
And their relationship was really intense. Like Sufis later described it as the union of two oceans.
Wow.
Like these two massive forces coming together. And through this relationship, Rumi basically went from being this mainstream cleric to this like passionate mystic, this poet of love, and even the originator of the whirling dervishes.
So a total transformation.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's quite a shift.
It really is. And he also he kind of moved away from this focus on what's called outer jihad.
Yeah, that's often associated with war.
Yeah, exactly. Like fighting against non-believers.
Okay.
And instead, he started focusing more on inner jihad.
What's that?
Well, it's like this internal struggle against your own ego.
Ah.
Your nafs, it's called.
Interesting. So it's more about personal growth
Exactly.
than about conquering others.
Right.
Okay. Now, I know the book highlights a lot of important encounters between Rumi and Shams and other figures as well that really bring these ideas to life. So let's talk about a few of those. What about the encounter at the inn?
Oh, yeah, that one's really interesting. So Shams is at this inn, and he sees these guys who are all drunk, and he's not too happy about it. And the innkeeper tries to justify it, saying that he has to use violence sometimes because God's kind of forgotten about them.
Like, he's taking justice into his own hands.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But Shams is like, wait a minute, is that really justice?
He challenges him.
He does, yeah. And then, this is pretty amazing, he takes the innkeeper's hand and reads his palm.
He reads his palm.
Yeah, and he's able to see, all this grief that the guy's carrying around.
Wow.
The loss of loved ones because of the Mongol riders and Genghis Khan and all that.
So Shams is kind of like a mystic.
Yeah, you could definitely say that.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, too, because we also get some background on Shams's own life.
Okay.
And it turns out that he'd been having these visions and hearing voices ever since he was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, but his father and everybody else just dismissed it as, a wild imagination or dreams.
Oh, so they didn't take him seriously?
No, not at all.
Huh?
And you can tell that it really affected him because he really hates the word dream. He even says that what he has are visions, not dreams.
I see.
Because of that negative association.
Right. And so these early experiences probably played a big role in shaping his, core beliefs, his 40 rules.
Totally, yeah. So he develops these, what he calls basic principles of the itinerant mystics of Islam, which eventually become his 40 rules of the religion of love.
That's quite a mouthful.
It is.
Yeah.
But the point is, he really believes that these truths can only be understood through the heart, not just through the head, through intellect.
Okay.
One of the rules specifically says the path to the truth is a labor of the heart, not of the head.
So it's about feeling, intuition.
Exactly, yeah. And this is a really big deal because it challenges the whole traditional way of thinking about religion and spirituality at the time, which was very much focused on, studying the scriptures and all that.
Right. So it's a more experiential approach.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. So we also see Shams interacting with other spiritual figures like Baba Zaman.
Right.
What can we learn from those encounters?
Yeah, so when Shams gets to Baba Zaman's dervish lodge in Baghdad, everyone's, freaking out about the Mongols.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The high judge is all worried about the refugees and what's going to happen to Baghdad. And Baba Zaman says this really interesting thing. He compares cities to human beings.
Okay.
They're born, they grow old, they die.
Right.
It's all part of the cycle.
Makes sense.
And then they start talking about this story of Moses and the shepherd.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic Sufi tale.
It is, yeah. So in this story, God gets mad at Moses for scolding this shepherd.
Why? What did the shepherd do?
Well, he was praying, but he was praying in this really unconventional way, almost disrespectful.
Okay.
But God's point is that it doesn't matter how you say the words, as long as your heart is in the right place.
So it's about sincerity.
Exactly, yeah. It's about this, like, sweet blasphemy, as the book calls it.
Interesting.
And then Moses realizes he was wrong and apologizes to the shepherd.
So it's about humility, too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So when Baba Zaman asks Shams why he's come to Baghdad, what does Shams say?
He says it wasn't a dream, it was a vision.
He makes that distinction again.
He does, yeah. And he talks about how he's been having these visions his whole life and how people always dismissed him, so he doesn't even like to use the word dream.
Right.
It's important to him.
Okay, and this meeting with Baba Zaman is actually about finding a companion for Rumi, right?
Exactly, yeah. Baba Zaman's been searching for someone who can, like, awaken Rumi's soul.
And he believes that Shams is the one.
He does, yeah.
Okay.
And eventually Shams leaves the lodge, but he doesn't go alone. He takes a novice with him named Aladdin.
Okay. And we also learn that Shams doesn't really trust words.
He doesn't, no.
He thinks they cause too many problems.
Yeah, he thinks they lead to misunderstandings and conflicts. And he believes that in the zone of love, silence is the best way to communicate.
So it's about that heart-to-heart connection again.
Exactly.
Now, all of this is happening against a backdrop of, like, war and conflict, right?
It is, yeah. But there's also this sense of hope, especially in Konya.
How so?
Well, the Sultan, Aladdin Kikubad, had this dream of making Konya into this peaceful city.
Okay.
Where poets and artists and philosophers could flourish.
Despite the conflict around them.
Yeah, like a haven in the midst of all the chaos.
That's beautiful.
It is, yeah. And Rumi's own mentor, Sayyid Burhanuddin, he realizes that Rumi's not truly happy.
Even though he's successful and respected.
Yeah, exactly. He's missing something.
And he needs a companion.
Right. He even quotes this verse from the Quran. Believers are each other's mirrors. Like, they need each other to reflect their own light.
That's powerful.
It is, yeah. So when Shams finally sets off to find Rumi, he takes this novice Aladdin with him.
Right. We talked about that.
Yeah. And he gives Aladdin this really weird first task.
What's that?
He tells him to go drink a whole pitcher of wine in the bazaar.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, especially for a dervish.
Right. But it shows how unconventional Shams is.
He's not afraid to challenge people.
Definitely not. And then we see him interacting with people who are often marginalized, like this leper, Hassan.
Okay.
And he treats Hassan with so much respect.
How?
Well, he greets him warmly, he calls him by his name, and he gives him this silver mirror to remind him that he has God inside him, just like everyone else.
That's a beautiful gesture.
It is, yeah. And then there's this scene at the mosque.
Okay.
Where this mob is accusing this woman who's dressed as a man of being a prostitute.
Oh, wow.
And Shams steps in and basically calls them out on their hypocrisy.
What does he say?
He says, did God set grapes a-growing, do you think? And at the same time make it a sin to drink.
He's challenging their interpretation of the rule.
Yeah, exactly. And then he says, surely he loves to hear the glasses clink.
That's pretty bold.
It is, yeah. And he also has this interesting take on drinking.
What's that?
He says it's not the wine itself that's bad, it's the person who drinks it to excess, who lets it control them.
So it's about personal responsibility. Okay. And then there's this encounter with the hermaphrodite, Desert Rose.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating one.
At the brothel, right.
Yeah. And Shams kind of gives this unconventional reading of the Quran.
Okay.
He says that its truths can be found not just in the text itself, but also in nature and in human beings.
So it's about looking beyond the literal.
Exactly, yeah. And he warns against those who are closed off to the world.
Because they're missing out on the truth.
Right. And then as Shams is arriving in Konya, he meets this peasant who tells him that people believe Rumi's sermons can cure sadness.
Interesting.
And Shams says that actually truth often makes people sad at first.
Because it challenges their beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. And then when he finally gets to Konya, guess who recognizes him?
Oh.
The leper, Hassan.
Oh, wow.
He says that Shams was in his dreams.
So their connection continues.
It does, yeah. And Shams gives him the silver mirror.
That's beautiful.
It is, yeah. No. It's like this reminder that everyone has the divine spark within them.
So as we see these two stories unfold, Ella's story in 2008 and Rumi and Shams' story in the 13th century, what are some of the big connections, the key themes that emerge?
Well, I think one of the biggest themes is this idea of transformation. Like both Ella and Rumi are at these points in their lives where they're kind of stuck.
Okay.
And they're both searching for something more.
Yeah, that resonates with me.
Right. And it's like, it doesn't matter what time period you're in. That search for meaning is a universal human experience.
Absolutely. And they're both challenged by these unconventional figures.
Definitely, yeah. Shams is obviously a huge challenge to the traditional religious establishment.
Right.
And A.Z. Zahara, through his writing, is challenging Ella's very conventional way of life.
Yeah, it's like they're both being pushed outside their comfort zones.
Totally.
And of course, love plays a huge role.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
the connection between Ella and Aziz, even though it's mostly through email at this point, it's still a form of love. And it's starting to change her. And then with Rumi and Shams, their love is like this driving force behind Rumi's transformation.
It's both spiritual and personal.
Yeah, it's hard to even separate the two.
Right.
And I think that's part of the point of the book.
So to wrap up this deep dive, what are the key insights we can take away from the 40 Rules of Love?
Well, I think one big takeaway is that sometimes the most unexpected connections can lead to the most profound changes.
Okay.
Like, you never know who's going to come into your life and shake things up.
Right.
And we also see how tradition and transformation are often in tension with each other.
Like it can be hard to let go of old ways of thinking.
Yeah, for sure. But the book also shows that sometimes you have to let go in order to grow. And it really emphasizes the importance of following your heart, even when it leads you off the beaten path.
And the power of love to transform us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, love can be challenging. It can be messy.
Yeah, for sure.
But it can also be the most amazing force for growth and change.
So, listener, as you go about your day, we want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
Think about these 40 rules of love, even the ones we didn't have time to talk about today. Which ones resonate with you?
Yeah.
How can you bring a more heart-centered approach to your own life? And are you open to those unexpected connections, those people who might challenge you and help you grow?
It's worth considering because sometimes the most profound journey is the one we take within ourselves.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 40 Rules of Love. Until next time, keep exploring.